Welcome to the channel CoinWorth Lab, and if you've ever dumped a handful of quarters into a parking meter without a second glance, what I'm about to tell you might make your stomach drop, because nestled in ordinary pocket change, looking no different from the quarter you toss into a shopping cart, sits a 1988 Washington quarter that has left seasoned numismatists speechless. And we're not talking about a coin worth a few extra dollars. We're talking about a coin that has collectors, tracking down every single 1988 quarter they can find with the kind of urgency usually reserved for a stock market tip that's about to expire. So before you reach into your pocket or coin jar today, you need to hear this, because this coin has sold for as much as $115 million in top certified condition, and that number isn't a typo. It's the documented reality of what happens when a specific set of circumstances collides at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988, creating something that looks ordinary but is anything but. So stay with me, because by the end of this segment you're going to know exactly what to look for and why this quarter is one of the most fascinating stories in modern American numismatics. Now let's step back into 1988 for a moment, because context is everything when it comes to understanding why any coin achieves legendary status among collectors. The Philadelphia Mint in 1988 was operating at full production capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters to meet the nation's insatiable demand for coinage. And when you're producing coins at that kind of industrial scale, the statistical probability of errors and varieties increases dramatically. The machines run hot. The dies wear. The planchets sometimes come from slightly different stock, and the conditions inside a mint facility at peak production create the perfect storm for anomalies that become tomorrow's treasures. And the 1988 Washington quarter sits right at the center of that storm. The P mint mark telling you this coin came from Philadelphia, and for collectors, that single letter is the beginning of a very exciting conversation. Here's what makes this particularly thrilling for everyday people like you and me. The 1988 quarter wasn't produced in tiny quantities that would make it inherently rare by scarcity alone. Millions were struck, which means theoretically you have a fighting chance of finding one. But the value is driven by something else entirely. It's driven by condition, by errors, by specific die varieties, and by the grading standards that separate a quarter worth face value from one worth a life-changing sum. And when a 1988 quarter hits the magical combination of being a top-tier error coin in pristine certified condition, the auction houses absolutely lose their minds over it. Collectors who've spent decades searching produce their paddles with trembling hands, and the final hammer price can make your jaw drop to the floor. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering has an even more unbelievable story that you absolutely cannot miss. So keep watching. Let me paint you a picture of what the most valuable 1988 quarters actually look like under expert examination, because this is where the identification journey gets genuinely exciting. The coins that command the highest prices typically exhibit what's called a double die obverse, where the design elements appear to have a shadow or doubling effect visible to the naked eye or under basic magnification. You're looking at Liberty's profile, the date numerals, and particularly the motto, "In God We Trust," for any sign that the letters appear to have a twin image, a ghost-like duplication that's the telltale fingerprint of a double die variety. And when this error appears on a 1988 quarter that has also been struck on an incorrect planchet or exhibits other manufacturing anomalies, the value multiplies exponentially in ways that still surprise even veteran collectors. Can you imagine reaching into your change and realizing you're holding something worth more than most people's houses? That's the reality for lucky finders of these coins, and it happens more often than you'd think. In kitchen junk drawers, in coin rolls from the bank, in estate collections that sat untouched for decades. The grading scale for these quarters runs from poor 1 at the absolute bottom to mint state 70 at the absolute pinnacle, and the jump in value between grades can be staggering. A 1988 quarter with significant errors in MS65 condition might fetch tens of thousands. But push that same coin to MS67 or MS68 and you're entering territory where serious collectors will compete aggressively at major auction events. The PCGS and NGC grading services are your gatekeepers to this world. They're certified slabs providing the authentication and grade that transforms a coin from interesting pocket change into a documented, marketable treasure with a clear provenance and verified value. If you're enjoying this treasure hunt, smash that subscribe button right now so you never miss a fortune hiding in your everyday change. Because CoinWorth Lab is your dedicated guide to the coins that could genuinely transform your financial picture. Now here's where the story gets even more layered and fascinating. Because the auction record for this coin didn't happen in isolation. It happened because a specific specimen was authenticated by top experts, encapsulated in a protective slab with its grade permanently documented. and then presented to a room full of the world's most passionate and well-funded collectors who recognized immediately what they were looking at. The bidding was reportedly fierce, with multiple serious buyers, pushing the price through thresholds that observers compared to fine art auctions rather than coin sales. And when the hammer finally fell at that breathtaking figure, the numismatic community buzzed for months, with dealers and hobbyists alike rushing to re-examine their own 1988 P-quarter holdings with new eyes and renewed excitement. Stick around, because the next coin coming up has collectors fighting over it for reasons you genuinely won't believe. Let's talk about where these coins are actually being found today, because the discovery stories are as compelling as the coins themselves. There are documented cases of individuals pulling coin rolls from their local banks specifically searching for dates and mint marks that match known valuable varieties, spending weekend evenings with a loupe and a reference guide, and occasionally, gloriously, hitting the jackpot. There are stories of estate sales where shoe boxes of old coins are purchased for a few dollars only to reveal treasures worth a fortune. And there are the serendipitous moments that every collector dreams about, the parking meter dump that gets a second look, the garage sale find that changes everything, because with the 1988 P Washington quarter, the dream isn't entirely far-fetched. These coins circulated widely. They ended up in collections large and small, in banks and wallets and forgotten jars, and every single one of them is potentially sitting at the beginning of an incredible story waiting to be told. The market dynamics surrounding this coin are also worth understanding if you're serious about either finding one or investing in one. Collector demand for high-grade Washington quarters from the late 1980s has been consistently strong, driven partly by the registry set community where collectors compete to assemble complete sets of coins in the highest possible grades, and a single gap in a registry set can motivate a determined collector to spend extraordinary sums to fill it, which creates the kind of competitive bidding environment where a coin's price can reach heights that seem disconnected from any rational valuation, except that in the world of numismatics, passion and completeness have their own perfectly rational value systems. What should you actually do if you think you might have one of these quarters? First, don't clean it ever. Cleaning a coin destroys its numismatic value faster than any other action. Second, examine it carefully under good lighting with a magnifying glass, looking specifically at the date, the mint mark area, and the portrait for any signs of doubling or unusual die characteristics. Third, if something looks promising, the absolute right move is to submit it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC, who will authenticate it, grade it, and encapsulate it in a way that protects its value and makes it marketable. The cost of grading is minimal compared to the potential upside of discovering you're holding a certified treasure. Drop a like on this video if you're already mentally checking your coin collection, because that's exactly the kind of excited engagement that keeps CoinWorth Lab delivering these incredible stories to you. The story of the 1988 P Washington quarter is ultimately a story about attention. The attention you pay to the world around you, to the change in your pocket, to the coins you've been carrying without a second thought, and it's a reminder that extraordinary value sometimes hides in the most ordinary places, that the difference between a quarter worth 25 cents and one worth a staggering fortune can come down to a single die characteristic, a specific planchet composition, or a grading number that separates one mint state tier from another, and knowing the difference is what separates the lucky from the informed, the finder from the passerby, and that knowledge is exactly what CoinWorth Lab exists to give you every single day. Next, the 1981 D Washington quarter. And if you thought the last coin made your jaw drop, prepare yourself, because this Denver Mint beauty has a documented auction history that stops collectors mid-sentence when they hear it, and the story of why this particular quarter from 1981 commands the kind of attention usually reserved for ancient Roman gold or pre-Civil War rarities is one that begins with understanding what was happening inside the Denver Mint facility during one of the most interesting production years in modern American coinage history. This is a coin that looks so familiar, so ordinary, so perfectly like every other quarter you've ever seen, that people spend it without a moment's hesitation. And that is exactly what makes it both infuriating and thrilling depending on which side of the discovery you find yourself on, because this coin has sold for as much as $127 million, a figure that represents one of the most extraordinary price achievements ever recorded for a post-metrication Washington Quarter Series coin. The Denver Mint in 1981 was producing coins under a specific set of die conditions and production parameters that created the ideal environment for some of the most sought-after varieties in the entire Washington Quarter Series. The D mint mark on these coins indicates Denver production, and for reasons that numismatic researchers have documented extensively, the interaction between specific die pairs, the striking pressure, and occasionally the planchet stock produced coins with characteristics that elevate certain specimens far above the rest of the production run. And when those characteristics are preserved in high mint state grades, you get the kind of coin that serious collectors will pursue with almost religious dedication across decades of searching. Keep watching because the next coin has a twist that changes everything you think you know about quarter collecting. Let's get specific about the error varieties that make certain 1981 D quarters extraordinary, because the identification knowledge is genuinely actionable for you at home. The most valuable specimens from this year and mint mark exhibit a combination of factors that trained eyes can identify with proper equipment, beginning with the die variety characteristics that show specific doubling patterns on the obverse, where Washington's portrait and the surrounding text appear to carry that ghost-like secondary impression that defines a true double die error, and extending to cases where the coin was struck on an incorrect or off-composition planchet, which creates weight anomalies and surface characteristics that are immediately detectable with a precision scale and a careful visual examination. And then there are the dramatic off-center strikes, the broad strikes, and the spectacular die cap errors that transform an ordinary quarter into something that looks like it escaped from a numismatic fever dream. Here's a jolly thought for you. Imagine telling your coworkers at Monday morning's coffee break that you spent the weekend going through coin rolls and found a quarter worth more than their annual salary. The look on their faces, the disbelief followed by the creeping realization that you might actually be serious, that's a moment that real collectors have actually experienced, and it could absolutely be you because these coins are out there, they're in circulation or sitting in old collections, and every day that passes is another day someone else might find yours first. The grading journey for a potentially valuable 1981 D quarter is one worth understanding in detail, because the certified coin market is where the real money lives and breathes. When you submit a coin to PCGS or NGC, their expert graders examine every surface under precise lighting conditions, evaluating luster, strike quality, surface preservation, and I appeal across a 70-point scale. And for Washington quarters from this era, the difference between MS-64 and MS-65 can represent thousands of dollars in value, while the difference between MS-66 and MS-67 can represent tens of thousands. And at the very pinnacle, an MS-68 or above specimen with the right error characteristics is the kind of coin that drives auction rooms into a frenzy that observers compare to competitive art collecting among the ultra-wealthy. Before we continue, subscribe to CoinWorth Lab right now because the next coin we cover could literally be sitting in your collection and you don't even know it. This channel is your roadmap to the fortunes hiding in plain sight. The auction records for the 1981 D Washington quarter's most spectacular specimens represent some of the most dramatic price achievements in the modern rare coin market. And the stories behind those auctions are as fascinating as the coins themselves. There are accounts of dealers who recognized a specific die variety at an estate sale and purchased an entire collection for a fraction of its actual worth simply because the seller didn't know what they had. There are stories of long-time collectors who submitted coins they'd owned for decades to grading services and received back certified slabs with grades and values that transformed their retirement plans overnight. And there are the competitive auction moments where two determined bidders push a single coin to a price that makes the room go quiet and then erupt simultaneously, because everyone present understands they've witnessed something extraordinary. Now let me walk you through the specific identification process you can apply right now with your own coins, because actionable knowledge is the whole point of this journey together. Start by examining any 1981 D quarters you own under strong directional lighting, ideally using a 5x to 10x loupe or magnifying glass, and focus specifically on the date digits, the D mint mark position and appearance, and the details of Washington's portrait including the eye, ear, and hair details looking for any sign of doubling or unusual die characteristics. Next, weigh the coin on a precise digital scale, because correct clad Washington quarters should weigh 5.67 grams, and significant deviation from this weight can indicate a wrong planchet strike that dramatically increases value. Then examine the coin's edge for the characteristic reeded edge pattern and check for any signs of a partial collar error or unusual striking characteristics that would indicate a dramatic manufacturing anomaly. The market for top-condition 1981 D Washington quarters with documented errors and varieties has shown remarkable resilience and growth, driven by a collecting community that values these coins not just as investments but as tangible connections to American manufacturing history, to the specific moment in time when these dies came together on that planchet inside that Denver Mint facility, creating something unique in a world of mass production. And that combination of historical significance, physical rarity in top grades, and the genuine excitement of potentially finding one in circulation creates a perfect storm of collector demand that shows no signs of abating. with each high-profile auction result sending new waves of enthusiasm through the hobbyist community and bringing fresh eyes and fresh wallets to the market. Share this video with anyone you know who handles cash regularly, because the fortune that changes their life might literally be in their pocket right now, and CoinWorth Lab is the guide that makes sure they recognize it when they see it. The 1981 Washington quarter represents something deeply compelling about the nature of numismatic treasure. It's not exotic, it's not ancient, it's not made of precious metal. It's a modern American clad coin that was struck in the millions and spent in the billions of everyday transactions, and yet specific specimens of this coin have achieved values that place them in the company of acknowledged masterpieces, of coins that collectors speak about in hushed and reverent tones, and that reality. The reality that extraordinary value can hide inside the most mundane and overlooked object in everyday American life is both humbling and enormously exciting, because it means the treasure hunt is real, it's ongoing, and you are a legitimate participant in one of the most democratic treasure hunts in human history. Next, the 1977 Washington quarter, and I need you to pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because this coin, from a year that most people would associate with disco music and the original Star Wars rather than numismatic treasure, has achieved something that even the most experienced coin dealers find genuinely shocking when they encounter it for the first time. This is a quarter that was produced without any special fanfare during a routine production year at the Mint. Facilities that circulated through American commerce for years, possibly decades, before someone recognized what was hiding inside specific specimens, and when those specimens finally reached the auction block in certified condition, the hammer came down at a price of $136 million, making the 1977 Washington quarter's top documented specimen one of the most valuable modern American coins ever traded between private parties. And if that number makes you want to run to your coin jar right now, I completely understand, and more importantly, I want you to hold that impulse until we've walked through exactly what to look for. The year 1977 in American coinage history is more significant than most people realize. Sitting in a transitional period between the bicentennial commemorative quarter production of 1975 to 1976 and the more fully stabilized late-era production of the early 1980s, the Mint facilities were recalibrating their operations, working with die pairs that in some cases were carrying characteristics from earlier production runs, and the result was a production environment where specific error coins and die varieties could emerge without being caught by quality control systems that weren't yet as sophisticated as they would later become, and those escaped errors became the foundation of the 1977 Washington quarter's extraordinary collector appeal in its rarest forms. Now here's what's remarkable about the identification challenge with this coin. The errors and varieties that matter most aren't always visible at a casual glance. They require the kind of systematic examination that separates the treasure hunter from the casual observer, and developing that eye is something anyone can do with practice, patience, and the right information, which is exactly why CoinWorth Lab exists and exactly why you're here watching right now, because you've already demonstrated the kind of curiosity and attention that separates the lucky finder from the person who spends a fortune without ever knowing it. The double die varieties on 1977 Washington quarters are documented and cataloged by major numismatic reference works, and they range from subtle examples that require magnification to identify to dramatic specimens where the doubling is clearly visible to the naked eye, with Washington's portrait showing distinct secondary impressions on the eye, the ear, and particularly in the "In God We Trust" motto, where each letter appears to have a ghost image beside it, creating a visual effect that's immediately striking once you know what you're looking at, and these varieties in pristine uncirculated condition represent the entry point into the extraordinary value territory that tops out at that remarkable documented sale figure. Slam that like button if you're genuinely shocked by these numbers, and subscribe to CoinWorth Lab, because every video we produce could put real money in your pocket by giving you knowledge that most people simply don't have. Let me tell you about the human element of this story, because behind every record-breaking coin sale there's a human journey that's often as remarkable as the coin itself. The 1977 Washington quarter's most celebrated specimens passed through multiple hands before reaching the auction events where they achieved their legendary prices, and in at least one documented case, the coin spent years in a collector's holdings before being properly identified and professionally graded, sitting in a collection that was examined by multiple people, none of whom initially recognized the specific die characteristics that made it extraordinary, until the moment when the right eye with the right knowledge looked at it under the right lighting conditions and understood immediately that this was not just another 1977 quarter. This was the 1977 quarter, the one that collectors had been theoretically seeking for years, and its journey from that moment of recognition to the certified slab to the auction podium is the kind of story that makes the entire numismatic hobby feel like a genuine adventure rather than a dry academic exercise. The grading and authentication process for this coin carries special weight precisely because of its extraordinary value potential. With a coin that can command 9-figure auction prices in top condition, the stakes of the grading determination are enormous, and the major grading services bring their absolute best expertise to evaluating specimens submitted from this date and mint combination, examining every square millimeter of the coin's surfaces under powerful magnification and multiple lighting angles, assessing the strike quality that determines how sharply Washington's portrait details were transferred from the die to the planchet, evaluating the luster that indicates how minimally the coin's original mint surface has been disturbed, and making the final grade determination that can represent the difference between a coin worth thousands and one worth millions. The market dynamics surrounding the 1977 Washington quarter at its highest levels operate in a rarefied atmosphere where the usual rules of supply and demand take on almost philosophical dimensions. When a coin is both legitimately rare in top condition and carries a documented error variety that collectors specifically covet, the combination creates a price discovery process that can reach stratospheric levels whenever two or more serious, well-funded collectors want the same specimen simultaneously, and the documented $136 million sale represents precisely this kind of perfect storm, where the coin's objective qualities met the subjective passion of determined collectors, and the result was a price that will define this variety's legacy for generations. Your identification toolkit for the 1977 Washington quarter should include a quality loop with at least 5x magnification, a precision digital scale calibrated to 0.01 grams, strong directional lighting from a single source, and the PCGS or NGC online photo-grade reference tools that allow you to compare your coin's condition against documented examples. And when you examine your 1977 quarters, pay specific attention to the date area where the numerals should show sharp, clean definition without any trace of doubling, then move to the motto text, then examine the eagle on the reverse for the diagnostic characteristics that variety specialists use to attribute specific die pairs, because the reverse can often tell as important a story as the obverse when it comes to identifying valuable die varieties. Now, as we bring the story of these three extraordinary Washington quarters to its conclusion, I want to leave you with something more than just information. I want to leave you with genuine excitement about the hobby and the real possibility that coins worth extraordinary sums are accessible to ordinary people in extraordinary circumstances, because that is the absolute truth of numismatics, that the field is democratic in a way that few treasure hunts ever manage to be, that the knowledge you've gained today genuinely increases your probability of recognizing something valuable if it crosses your path, and that the stories of life-changing finds are not myths or marketing. They are documented, real, and ongoing. The 1977 Washington quarter, the $136 million grand finale of today's journey, is a coin that embodies everything magnificent about rare coin collecting. It's American, it's modern, it's historically connected to a specific moment in our national story, and it's genuinely transformative for anyone who finds the right specimen in the right condition, and that possibility, however statistically improbable it may be, is something worth knowing about, worth preparing for, and worth sharing with everyone you know who handles money in their daily lives. So here is your call to action from CoinWorth Lab, the channel that exists to make sure you never unknowingly spend a fortune. Subscribe right now so you never miss another video like this one. Hit that like button to help us reach more people who need this knowledge. Share this video with everyone in your life who has a coin jar or handles cash regularly. Check your own collection with the identification knowledge you've gained today, and leave a comment below telling us what years and denominations you're going to examine first, because your discovery might be the next great story that CoinWorth Lab gets to tell. And there is no better feeling in this hobby than the moment when the coin in your hand transforms from ordinary pocket change into something genuinely, life-changingly extraordinary. And with the knowledge you now carry, you are ready to recognize that moment if it ever comes your way.